Lieutenant Katie Morgan walked through the metal hallway of the alien ship and felt very small. The walls were too high. The doors were too wide. Everything on this vessel was built for creatures much bigger than her. She had been on the Valkyrie diplomatic ship for 3 weeks now. Earth Command had sent her as the first human to live among the Valkyrie people. It was supposed to be a great honor. But most days, Katie just felt alone and out of place. The Valkyrie were hunters. They came from a world where gravity was twice as strong as Earth. Their bodies had grown powerful because of this. Each adult Valkyrie stood 7 feet tall with thick muscles under their gray skin. They had claws that could cut through metal. Their eyes were amber-colored and could see in the dark. When they smiled, they showed rows of sharp teeth. Katie was 5 feet and 6 inches tall. She had no claws. Her teeth were flat. Her eyes needed light to see properly. Among these predators, she felt like a small rabbit walking through a den of wolves. High Commander Raxos led the ship. He was the biggest Valkyrie Katie had ever seen. His voice was deep like thunder, and when he walked, the floor shook slightly under his weight. He treated Katie with respect. But she could tell that many of his crew did not understand why a soft human was allowed on their ship. What Katie did not know was that Commander Raxos had brought his family on this mission. His mate was visiting her homeworld, so Raxos had taken their 3 cubs with him. Tarek was the oldest at 12 cycles, which was like 12 years in human time. He was already tall and strong, eager to prove himself as a future warrior. Myra was 10 cycles old. She was quick and clever, always watching everything around her. Little Kova was only 7 cycles. She still had soft fur on her ears, and her claws had not fully hardened yet. The cubs had their own section of the ship. They had tutors and training rooms and everything they needed. But they were curious about the human. Very curious. On her 4th day aboard, Katie started her morning routine. She woke up early before the artificial lights turned on fully. Her small quarters had just enough space for her to move around. She rolled out her thin mat on the floor and began to stretch. Back on Earth, Katie had done yoga every morning since she was 16 years old. It kept her body loose and her mind calm. In space, it was even more important. The artificial gravity felt strange on her joints. Without stretching, her muscles would become tight and sore. She started with simple movements. She raised her arms above her head and breathed deeply. She bent forward and touched her toes. She twisted her spine gently from side to side. Then she moved into harder poses. She balanced on one leg with her arms spread wide. She lowered herself close to the ground with her weight on her hands. She held each position and breathed slowly. Katie did not know that she had an audience. Above her quarters, there was a ventilation shaft. The metal grate had small holes in it, just big enough for curious eyes to peek through. 3 pairs of amber eyes watched the human from the darkness. Tarek had found the spot first. He had been exploring the maintenance tunnels, which young Valkyrie were not supposed to enter. But Tarek never followed rules that seemed boring. When he found a vent that looked down into the human's room, he could not believe his luck. He had called his sisters immediately. Myra came running, always happy to break rules with her brother. Little Kova followed because she followed everywhere her older siblings went. Now all 3 of them lay flat on their stomachs in the dark tunnel, watching the strange human below. "What is she doing?" Kova whispered. Her voice was high and soft. "Quiet," Tarek hissed. "She might hear us." But Katie did not hear them. She was focused on her breathing. She moved into the warrior pose, spreading her legs wide and stretching her arms out to both sides. Her face was calm. Her body was still. She held the position for a long time. Myra tilted her head. She had seen Valkyrie warriors train before. They moved fast. They struck hard. They growled and roared to show their power. But this human was doing something different. She was moving slowly. She was being quiet. And yet there was something powerful about it. "She looks like she is hunting," Myra whispered. "But in slow motion." "Humans do not hunt," Tarek said. "They are too weak." "Then what is she doing?" Tarek did not have an answer. Below them, Katie finished her routine. She stood still for a moment with her eyes closed. Then she rolled up her mat and began to get ready for her day. She had no idea that 3 young predators had just watched at her entire practice. The cubs crawled backward through the tunnel until they reached a place where they could talk. "We have to come back tomorrow," Kova said. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "I agree," Myra said. "I want to see more." Tarek tried to look like he did not care. But inside, he was just as curious as his sisters. The human had done something he had never seen before. She had been completely still and completely in control. No shaking. No struggle. Just calm power. "Fine," he said. "We come back tomorrow. But we tell no one. This is our secret." His sisters nodded eagerly, and so began the strange education of 3 predator cubs, taught unknowingly by a small human woman who just wanted to stretch her muscles each morning. For 7 days, the cubs returned to the ventilation shaft every morning. They woke up before anyone else on the ship. They crawled through the dark tunnels in silence. They pressed their faces against the metal grate and watched the human stretch. Katie. Morgan had no idea she had become the most interesting thing on the ship for 3 young Velthari. She simply did her yoga, got dressed, and went about her duties. She attended meetings where she understood only half of what was said. She wrote reports to send back to Earth. She ate her meals alone in the corner of the dining hall while massive predators sat at the other tables, but in those early morning hours, she belonged to the cubs. Tarek watched with the eyes of a future warrior. He studied how Katie held her positions. She did not shake or wobble. Her muscles did not fail her. When she balanced on one leg, she could stay there for many minutes. This was not weakness. This was control. Tarek had trained with the best Velthari warriors on his homeworld. None of them could stay still for so long. Myra watched with the eyes of a hunter. She noticed how Katie moved from one position to the next. There were no wasted movements. Every action had a purpose. When Katie reached her arms up and then bent forward, it was one smooth flow. Myra had seen water move like that. She had seen wind move like that. But she had never seen a living creature move with such grace. Little Kova watched with the eyes of a child. She thought the human was playing a game. A very quiet, very slow game. But the more she watched, the more she wanted to play too. The human looked peaceful. She looked happy. Kova wanted to feel like that. On the 5th day, Katie did something new. She sat on her mat with her legs crossed and her eyes closed. She put her hands on her knees and did not move at all. She sat there for 10 whole minutes, just breathing. The cubs were confused. "Is she sleeping?" Kova asked. "Her eyes are closed, but she is sitting up," Myra said. "That is not sleeping." "Maybe she is sick," Tarek suggested. But even he did not believe that. The human did not look sick. She looked more alive than ever. Even though she was completely still, when Katie finally opened her eyes and stood up, Myra saw something strange. The human was smiling. Not a big smile, but a small one. A peaceful one. Whatever she had been doing while sitting still had made her happy. On the 6th day, Katie did the warrior pose again. This time, Tarek paid very close attention. He memorized how her feet were placed. He noted the angle of her arms. He watched how she held her head high and looked straight forward. Her hands were open, not clenched into fists. Her shoulders were down, not raised with tension. That night, after the ship's lights dimmed for the sleep cycle, Tarek tried the pose himself. He stood in the sleeping chamber he shared with his sisters. He spread his legs wide like the human had done. He stretched out his arms. He tried to be still. He lasted about 3 seconds before he fell over sideways. The crash was loud. His body hit Myra, who was lying on her sleeping pad. She yelped in surprise and rolled into Kova. Kova woke up screaming, and within moments, all 3 cubs were tangled together in a pile of limbs and tails. Kova started laughing first. Her laughter was high and loud, the way only young Velthari could laugh. Myra tried to be angry, but she could not stop herself from laughing too. Even Tarek, embarrassed and frustrated, felt his lips pull back in a grin. "What were you doing?" Myra demanded, untangling herself from the pile. The human pose, Tarek admitted. The warrior one. It looked easy when she did it. Let me try, Myra said. She stood up and attempted the same position. She lasted longer than Tarek, maybe 5 seconds before her legs started to shake. She had to grab the wall to stop herself from falling. This is harder than it looks, she said, breathing heavily. Prova jumped up. My turn, my turn. She was the smallest and the least balanced. She managed to spread her legs and raise her arms, but she immediately started wobbling. Her tail swung back and forth as she tried to find her center. Then her left foot slipped, and she went down with a thump, but she was still laughing. Again, she demanded. I want to try again. They did not hear the heavy footsteps in the hallway. They did not see the door slide open. They were too busy trying to balance and falling over and laughing at each other. High Commander. Raxos stood in the doorway and watched his children with confusion on his face. What is happening here? He asked. His voice was deep and serious, but there was also curiosity in it. The cubs froze. Tarek was in the middle of another attempt at the pose. Myra was trying to help Kova stand on one leg. All three of them turned to look at their father with wide, guilty eyes. Father? Tarek started. We can explain. I am listening. The explanation came out in a jumble. All three cubs talked at the same time. Words tumbled over each other. There was mention of ventilation shafts and the human and strange morning rituals. And standing on one leg and falling over, Raxos raised one clawed hand, and his children went silent. You have been spying on Lieutenant Morgan? He asked. His voice was not angry, but it was serious. Tarek lowered his head. Yes, father. We watched her through the vents. Every morning for 7 days. That is a violation of her privacy. We know. We are sorry. Raxos looked at his children. They were embarrassed and scared, waiting for punishment. But he could also see the curiosity still burning in their eyes. They were not sorry they had watched the human. They were only sorry they had been caught, he thought for a long moment. Tell me about these rituals, he finally said. So the cubs told him everything. They described how the human stretched and bent and twisted her body. They talked about the slow movements and the calm breathing. They explained the warrior pose, the one they had been trying to copy. She is not like the warriors we train with, Myra said. She is slow and quiet, but she is also strong. She holds positions that would make us shake. She does not struggle. She just is. Raxos listened to every word. When his children finished, he nodded slowly. You will apologize to Lieutenant Morgan tomorrow, he said. You violated her privacy, and you must face the consequences of that. Yes. Father, the cubs said together. But, Raxos added, and his amber eyes glinted with something that might have been interest, I think I would like to know more about these human rituals as well. The cubs looked at each other with hope. Perhaps their punishment would not be so bad after all. The message came early in the morning before Katie had even finished her yoga routine. Her communication device buzzed with a formal summons to the command deck. The message was from High Commander Raxos himself. Katie felt her stomach drop. In 3 weeks on this ship, she had never been called to the command deck for a private meeting. Something must have gone wrong. She ran through every interaction she'd had, every word she'd spoken, trying to figure out what mistake she had made. She dressed quickly in her formal uniform and made her way through the tall corridors. Every Velthary she passed seemed to look at her with those glowing amber eyes. Were they always this intense, or was she imagining it? The command deck was a massive circular room at the top of the ship. Windows wrapped around the entire space, showing the stars outside. Control stations were arranged in a ring, each one operated by a Velthary crew member. At the center stood High Commander Raxos, and behind him, looking very small and very guilty, were 3 young Velthary. Katie recognized them immediately. She had seen them around the ship a few times. The commander's children. The oldest one was almost as tall as her. The youngest still had soft fur on her ears. Lieutenant Morgan, Raxos said. His voice echoed through the room. Thank you for coming. Of course, Commander. Katie stood straight and tried not to let her nervousness show. How may I help you? My children have something to tell you. He stepped aside and the three cubs moved forward. The oldest one, a male with dark gray skin, spoke first. Lieutenant Morgan, my name is Tarek. These are my sisters, Myra and Kova. He took a deep breath. We have been watching you every morning for 7 days. We hid in the ventilation shaft above your quarters. We saw you doing your morning activities. We did not have your permission. We violated your privacy. We are sorry. Katie blinked. Of all the things she had expected, this was not on the list. You watched me do yoga? She asked. We did not know it was called that, the middle one, Myra said. We thought it might be combat training, or hunting preparation, or some kind of human ritual. The smallest one, Kova, stepped forward with her head down. We tried to copy you last night. Tarek fell over and hit Myra, and then we all fell down and Father found us. Katie did not know what to say. She looked at Commander Raxos, who was watching her with an expression she could not read. Then she looked back at the three cubs. They were clearly expecting punishment. Their ears were flat against their heads. Their tails hung low. And then Katie did something that surprised everyone. Including herself, she laughed. It started as a small sound. But it grew until she was laughing so hard that tears formed in her eyes. The cubs stared at her with complete confusion. Commander Raxos tilted his head like a dog that had just heard a strange noise. I am sorry, Katie said, wiping her eyes. I am not laughing at you. It is just that I have spent 3 weeks on this ship feeling like the strangest creature in the galaxy. And the whole time, 3 young Velthari were hiding in my ceiling, watching me stretch. She laughed again, and this time she saw the corners of Kova's mouth twitch upward. You are not angry? Tarek asked carefully. I am not angry, Katie said. I am surprised. And a little embarrassed. I must have looked very strange to you. You looked powerful, Myra said. The words came out fast, like she could not hold them back. You moved slowly, but you were in complete control. You held positions that would make our muscles shake. You did not struggle at all. How do you do it? Katie smiled. Practice. Lots and lots of practice. Will you teach us? Kova asked. Her eyes were bright and hopeful. We tried to do the warrior pose, but we kept falling over. Will you show us how? Katie looked at Commander Raxos. His face was still hard to read, but she thought she saw interest there too. Perhaps even hope. Commander, she said, would it be acceptable for me to teach your children? It would be part of our cultural exchange in a way. Sharing human practices with the Velthari. Raxos was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I think that would be acceptable, he said. My children have shown curiosity about human ways. It would be good for them to learn from you directly, rather than hiding in ventilation shafts like rodents. The cubs made sounds of protest at being compared to rodents, but their eyes were shining with excitement. There is one condition, Raxos added. Yes, Commander? I would like to observe these lessons. To understand what my children are learning? Katie nodded. Of course. You are welcome to join us. I do not wish to join. I wish to observe. But Katie saw something in his eyes. A flicker of the same curiosity that burned in his children. She had a feeling that the High Commander might not stay an observer for very long. They arranged to meet in one of the smaller training rooms the next morning. Katie would have time to prepare. She would need to think about how to teach yoga to beings who were built so differently from humans. The Velthari had different joints, different muscles, different proportions. What worked for a human body might not work for them, but as she walked back to her quarters, Katie felt something she had not felt since arriving on this ship. She felt useful. She had spent 3 weeks sitting in meetings where she barely understood the language. She had eaten alone and walked alone and felt like a burden on this ship full of warriors. But now 3 young predators wanted to learn from her. They had watched her in secret because they were fascinated by what she could do. Maybe humans did have something to offer after all. That night, Katie stayed up late making plans. She drew diagrams of poses. She wrote notes about breathing techniques. She thought about how to explain the purpose of yoga to creatures who had probably never heard of inner peace or meditation. She had come to this ship as a diplomat. She had expected to spend her time in formal meetings and writing reports. Instead, she was about to become a teacher, and she could not wait to begin. The cargo bay was the largest open space on the ship. Containers were pushed to the walls to create a clear area in the center. The floor was cold metal, but Katie had asked for mats to be brought in. 6 mats lay in a row, 3 small ones for the cubs, 1 large one for Commander Raxos to observe from, and 1 for herself. Katie arrived early to prepare. She stretched her own muscles and ran through the lesson in her head. She was nervous. She had never taught yoga before, especially not to alien predators. The cubs arrived exactly on time. Tarek walked with his chest puffed out, trying to look confident. Myra moved with quick, eager steps. Little Kova practically bounced through the door, unable to contain her excitement. Commander Raxos followed behind them. He took his place on the observation mat and sat with his arms crossed. His face showed nothing, but his eyes watched everything. "Good morning," Katie said, trying to sound calm. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for teaching us," Myra said immediately. "Before we begin, I want to explain what yoga is." Katie stood in front of the cubs. Yoga is not fighting. It is not about being strong enough to defeat enemies. It is about being in control of your own body and mind. It is about balance, flexibility, and focus. "But the warrior pose," Tarek said. "That is about warriors, yes?" "The pose is named after warriors, but not because it teaches you to fight. It teaches you to stand firm, to be steady, to face challenges without fear. A warrior needs a calm mind as much as a strong body." Tarek thought about this. In his training with Velthari warriors, they had always focused on speed and power. No one had ever talked about a calm mind. "We will start simple," Katie said. "Please stand on your mats." The 3 cubs moved to their positions. Katie stood on her own mat where they could see her clearly. This is called mountain pose. It is the foundation of everything else. You stand tall with your feet planted firmly on the ground. Your arms hang at your sides. Your shoulders are relaxed. Your head is high. You breathe slowly and deeply. She demonstrated. To anyone watching, it might look like she was just standing there. But there was purpose in every part of her body. Her weight was balanced evenly on both feet. Her spine was straight. Her muscles were engaged but not tense. The cubs copied her. Tarek stood too stiff, his muscles locked with effort. Myra could not stop her tail from twitching. Kova kept shifting her weight from foot to foot. "Relax," Katie said softly. "This is not a test. This is just standing. Feel the ground under your feet. Feel your breath moving in and out. There is nothing to prove here." Slowly, the cubs began to settle. Tarek's shoulders dropped. Myra's tail stopped moving. Kova found her balance. "Good," Katie said. "Now we breathe together. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slowly." She counted for them. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. The cargo bay was silent except for the sound of breathing. 4 beings from 2 different worlds breathing together from his observation mat. Commander Raxos watched with growing interest. His children were standing still. Not struggling, not competing, not trying to prove themselves. Just being still. He had tried to teach them patience for years. This small human had achieved it in minutes. "Now we move into forward fold," Katie said. "Bend at the waist and reach toward your feet. Do not force it. Go only as far as your body allows." She bent forward smoothly, her fingers touching the mat beside her feet. The cubs tried to follow. Myra, with her naturally flexible spine, managed to get her claws almost to the floor. She made a sound of surprise at how far she could reach. Tarek struggled more. His muscles were tight from warrior training. He could only reach his knees. But Katie noticed that he did not give up or complain. He held the position and breathed through the discomfort. Little Kova bent forward happily, her ears flopping down toward the ground. She could not reach very far, but she was giggling at the strange feeling of being upside down. Very good, Katie said. Now come back up slowly. We will try the warrior pose next. This was the one they had been waiting for. All three cubs straightened eagerly. Katie demonstrated the pose step by step. She turned her body to the side. She spread her legs wide, bending her front knee. She stretched her arms out in opposite directions. She held her head high and looked over her front hand. This is warrior pose, she said. It builds strength in your legs and opens your chest. But more importantly, it teaches you to be grounded. No matter what comes at you, you stand firm. The cubs attempted the pose. Tarek went too aggressive, spreading his legs too wide. He wobbled dangerously before catching himself. Myra found a good position, but kept looking around to see how her siblings were doing. Myra, Katie said gently, the warrior looks straight ahead. The warrior does not worry about others. The warrior trusts in their own strength. Myra turned her head forward. She focused on a spot on the far wall. Her body became more stable. Kova was struggling the most. Her young legs were not strong enough to hold the deep bend. Katie walked over to her. You can make the stance smaller, Katie said. Bring your feet closer together. The pose will grow as you grow. Kova adjusted her feet. The pose became easier. She was able to hold it without shaking. Now we breathe, Katie said. Hold the pose and breathe. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. They held the pose for 10 breaths. When Katie finally told them to relax, all three cubs were sweating slightly. Their muscles were warm, but their eyes were bright with accomplishment. That was amazing, Kova said breathlessly. We did it, Myra added. We actually did it. Even Tarek smiled, though he tried to hide it. Katie looked at the cargo bay door. Sometime during the lesson, it had opened. 5 adult Velthari stood there, watching. Crew members who had heard about the strange human teaching the commander's children. Lieutenant Morgan, one of them said slowly. May we watch the next lesson? Katie looked at Commander Raxos. He gave her a small nod. You may do more than watch, Katie said. You may join us if you like. The next morning there were 8 Velthari on mats. The morning after that there were 15. And by the end of the week, Katie was teaching 50 students in the cargo bay, including 3 predator cubs who stood proudly in the front row. 6 months passed faster than Katie could have imagined. The diplomatic mission was coming to an end. Soon the Velthari ship would return to its home system, and Katie would be transferred back to an Earth vessel. She stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The planet below was a trading hub where the final meetings of the mission were taking place. Katie had attended all of them, but her mind was not on trade agreements or diplomatic protocols. Her mind was on the family she was about to leave behind. The door behind her slid open, and 3 sets of footsteps approached. She did not need to turn around to know who they were. After 6 months, she knew those footsteps by heart. Tarek stood on her left. He was taller now, almost a head above her. His body had filled out with muscle, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that had not been there before. He no longer needed to puff out his chest or prove himself. He knew his own strength. Myra stood on her right. She had grown too, becoming lean and graceful. Her movements were smoother than ever, a perfect blend of Velthari power and the flow she had learned from yoga. She had told Katie once that the other young Velthari called her strange for being so calm. Myra had taken it as a compliment. Little Kova stood in front of Katie, leaning back against her. She was not so little anymore. Her fur had shed from her ears and her claws had hardened. But she still sought comfort from the human who had become like a second mother to her. You are sad? Kova said. It was not a question. Yes, Katie admitted. I will miss you very much. We will miss you too, Myra said quietly. The ship will not be the same without you. The mornings will not be the same, Tarek added. Who will lead the practice when you are gone? Katie smiled sadly. This was something she had been thinking about for weeks. You will, she said. Tarek single quotes as eyes went wide. Me? All 3 of you. I have taught you everything I know. You have been practicing for 6 months. You are ready to be teachers now. But we are just cubs, Myra protested. You were cubs when you started. You are not cubs anymore. Katie turned to face them fully. Do you remember how you felt before you learned yoga? How hard it was to be still. How difficult patience was. The three siblings nodded. Look at yourselves now. Tarek, you used to shake after 30 seconds in warrior pose. Now you can hold it for 10 minutes without effort. Mira, you could not stop your tail from twitching. Now you are the stillest person in any room. Kova, you could barely balance on 2 feet. Now you can balance on one leg with your eyes closed. Katie put a hand on each of their shoulders. You have grown so much. And you can help others grow too. Heavy footsteps announced the arrival of Commander Raxos. He had changed over the past 6 months as well, though the change was subtle. He stood a little looser. His face showed expression more often. And twice, Katie had caught him practicing the breathing exercises in his private quarters. Lieutenant Morgan, he said, there is a matter we must discuss. Of course, Commander. I have received a message from the Velthry High Council. They have been observing the changes in my crew over these past months. Productivity has increased by 15%. Conflicts between crew members have decreased by 40%. The medical bay reports fewer stress-related illnesses than ever before. Katie nodded. She had noticed these changes too, though she had not put numbers to them. The High Council has made a formal request, Raxos continued. They wish to incorporate your yoga practice into the training program at our warrior academies. All 5 of our colony worlds would implement this teaching. Katie stared at him. You want to teach yoga to Velthry warriors across the galaxy? Yes, they are calling it the Human Stillness Discipline. It will be an official part of warrior training alongside combat and tactics. Katie did not know what to say. She had come to this ship as a simple liaison officer. She had thought she would spend her time in boring meetings and writing reports. Instead, she had started a movement that would spread across 5 worlds. There is more, Raxos said. He looked at his children, who straightened proudly. Tarek, Myra, and Kova have volunteered to serve as the first instructors. They will travel to the warrior academies and teach what you have taught them. Kova bounced on her feet with excitement. We will be teachers, just like you said. We asked Father if we could do this, Myra added. We want to share what you gave us with everyone. You have shown us a new way, Tarek said seriously. A way to be strong without fighting. A way to be powerful without hurting. That is something worth spreading. Katie felt tears forming in her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they fell down her cheeks anyway. The cubs immediately looked worried. Why are you leaking? Kova asked with concern. Katie laughed through her tears. Humans do this when they are very happy or very sad. Right now, I am both. We do not want you to be sad, Myra said. Then do something for me. Katie wiped her face and smiled at them. Every morning when you teach your students, remember where this started. Remember a small human in a small room, just trying to stretch her muscles. Remember that great things can come from simple beginnings. We will remember, Tarek promised. We will never forget, Myra agreed. Never ever, Kova added firmly. Commander Raxos cleared his throat. There's one final thing, Lieutenant Morgan. The High Council has asked me to deliver a formal offer. They would like you to stay with the Velthry as a permanent cultural advisor. You would have your own quarters on the homeworld. You would be considered an honored member of our society. Katie's heart jumped. Stay with the Velthry? Leave Earth behind? She thought about it for a long moment. Then she shook her head slowly. I am honored, Commander, truly, but I think my work here is done. The cubs can teach others now. The tradition will continue without me. She looked at the 3 young Velthry who had become like her own children. Besides, if I stayed, they would always see me as the teacher. They need to become their own leaders. Raxos nodded with respect. You are wise, Lieutenant. Wiser than many who are much older. The next morning, Katie led her final practice in the cargo bay. 50 Valkyrie stood on mats, following her movements. The 3 cubs stood at the front, ready to take her place. When they moved into warrior pose, Katie spoke for the last time. Remember why you stand. You stand to be strong. You stand to be calm. You stand to face whatever comes without fear. 50 Valkyrie held the pose in perfect stillness. 50 predators trained for violence, choosing peace, and in the front row, 3 young teachers held their poses the longest, honoring the small human who had taught them that true strength comes from within.